Hi everyone, it's Stephen Stewart. I'm the CEO of Power Ore, and we're overdue for an update, and I think it's a good time because we just finished our total compilation and results on the Opemiska Copper Mine Complex drill program. The drill program itself was in the spring and summer. We had a whole series of results come out thereafter. We drilled 23 holes, fantastic results, some super high grade ones. We had 12 holes that were at or near 100 meters or more that had mineralization. Really excellent drill results is the bottom line. So the other day we released a news release that also had our sections and interpretations and conclusions, and we're just going to run through them very briefly on this presentation. So let's get started. Forward-looking statements, everybody knows what that means. Just to set the table very briefly, I won't go into too much detail, but I have to emphasize this project's location and infrastructure. Again, as I always say, we've got rail, road, power right on site. We are in the Chibougamau district of Quebec, which is a well-known, very established copper and gold district. A lot of mining pedigree there. The First Nations and the locals understand the value that mining can bring to their community, the wealth that it can bring to their community. And of course, we've got the two mines there, the Springer and the Perry, which themselves comprise the Opemiska Copper Mine project. I'll make a point that we've so far exclusively focused on the Springer mine. We believe that's where the open pit potential is. The Perry, we're going to be very much focusing on going forward, but we haven't even gotten to it yet. There's just been so much going on, so much interest on our side on the Springer that's all we've done so far, including the drilling and the modeling. I can say the modeling of the historical work on Perry is complete. We're in the process of designing the drill program, but I won't get too much into that for this presentation. As I said, this presentation is going to be focused on the results that we've had on the Springer mine. So the key points I'll talk about the elephant in the room with respect to copper is copper's really behaved inversely to gold. Gold has been on fire, copper has not. And accordingly, our share price and all copper producers and exploration companies' share price have suffered, and we've been no exception, which is unfortunate because we've had some absolutely amazing holes. Some of the best drill intersections I've seen coming out of a copper junior in a long time when you consider grade, width, and depth. We had one hole that was 2.5% over 74 meters, about 15 meters from surface, right in the middle of Quebec, right off the highway. You know, the location and the depth and the infrastructure, that just allows you, why that's so important, it allows you to have a lesser grade, lesser tons, because it's not so expensive to build and operate, because we're not in the Rocky Mountains, we're not kilometer deep, etc. Not that the Opemiska has lesser grades or lesser tons, but those elements, the infrastructure, the location, and the depth, just allow the economics to be that much better, and that's where the capital will ultimately flow when copper comes back in vogue. It's not in vogue right now because the momentum is on the gold front, but if you're going to buy and hold, be patient. I think there's some really good buys on copper, not just Power Ore, but copper in general. There are systematic supply issues with copper. You know, the best example I use is Chile's mining half the grade they were 10 years ago. So they used to mine 1.5%, now they mine 0.7 and less. So there are problems with copper and the demand for copper. If it has a switch on it, it's got copper. That's the bottom line. Okay, so moving forward, we've confirmed, the key point is we've confirmed our theory of disseminated mineralization. Why is that important? Well, that was the whole objective behind this drill program. The Opemiska and the Springer and the Perry were always known to have these vein systems. You can always see that mineralization. It's super high grade. We've shown pictures of it before. It looks really sexy. But that's not what we were drilling. We were drilling the non-sexy stuff, the stuff that you can't tell that's mineralized. It's in the wall rock outside of the veins. We looked at the data and we could tell it was disseminated, so there's lower grade outside these veins, and we've proven it with our drill program. Again, to repeat ourselves, we had 12 holes at or more than 100 meters of mineralization, not in the veins, there's in these stringer zones outside of the veins. So we've confirmed our theory. Again, that's important when you're trying to define an open pit. You want to have as much material going through the mill that's payable as possible. And when it's disseminated, it means you're not only getting really paid on the veins, that's the rich material, but you want to get paid on the stuff that's that would have been considered waste thereof. Now we think it's not waste, we think it's payable material. That's why we're very bullish on this Springer being open pittable. But there's still more work to be done, but it's looking great. In addition to confirming our disseminated thesis, we know that it's shallow, but we also discovered new veins. So there are new veins that were never mined that we encountered, particularly to the north and northwest, that we discovered. So that's high-grade material. That's new information. And we also discovered new disseminated zones, in particular zones that we weren't expecting to be mineralized at all. I've talked about it in the past. We call it the rhyolite zone. I'll show you in some slides going forward. But basically, everybody thought the rhyolites were completely barren. We drilled many holes into one hole. We drilled 80 meters, fully mineralized throughout. So why is that interesting? It expands the envelope of what we thought was mineable. So this thing is bigger than we thought it could be. That's very good news. And gold, while this is very much a copper project, it has lots of gold. Not to hitch our wagon to the gold bandwagon, but there is lots of gold. You can see it on our website. We list all of the drill holes and all of the polymetallic elements, each of the metal that go into our copper equivalent. It's copper rich for sure, but there's lots of gold. Gold is very much secondary. We see it consistent with the copper, so it's mineralized with the copper. But there's also what we know of is there's also a separate gold vein. We think it's a separate event. They weren't mining it when Falconbridge was in operation because gold just wasn't economic back then. It was $35 an ounce, and so they were only interested in the copper, not interested in the gold. Obviously, that changes now. We're very much interested in anything that's payable, and gold is certainly valuable in this day and age. So there's lots of gold here. And then the key points is location and infrastructure. I think I was pretty clear on my point there. This project is as good as it gets in terms of copper project infrastructure. Again, not in the Rocky Mountains, not 2 kilometers deep, right on the road, right on the rail, which is particularly important for base metal. And then what is all the stuff above I talked about was most of the good news. The bad news is, or it's a good news actually. The bad news is good news if you're an investor looking at Power Ore, is that we are worth less. We are worth less than we were before we drilled some of the best intersections on a copper project in Canada, or quite frankly, anywhere really. I haven't seen 2.5% over 75 meters at surface in a long time in a copper project, let alone in the middle of Quebec. So that's value. I encourage you to do your due diligence, look at the comparables, but look at our results, look at our market cap. Unbelievable. We are a $3 million company with some very, very sexy intersections and a project that's very, very well known. So I think that's mostly to do with copper, Trump versus China. Dr. Copper has been ill, and but that will change. There are systematic issues. Copper will have its day, and we've seen how quickly that can change with gold, and ultimately that will happen with copper. When, I don't know, but it will happen. So our conclusions from the drill program, I touched upon many of these things, so I'll just summarize them. But effectively, the main point is, again, it's disseminated material in addition to the high-grade veins. I'll also jump down to number 4 is the crown pillars are thicker than anticipated. The crown pillars are important because that is the veins. Not only is there disseminated material in the crown pillars, there's the incredibly high-grade material, which we've seen 10%, 20%, even 30% copper equivalent in these veins are still in the crown pillars. That means it's payable. We'll recoup that in any economics and ultimately when the deposit is mined. So and you mine that first, so that helps with the payback, that helps with your IRR and your NPV. You want the rich stuff at the top, so that's why the crown pillar is particularly interesting, and it is thicker than anticipated. We thought it was between 30 and 60 meters, and we see thicker zones than that, so that's good. Jumping back up to number 2, we found new areas of mineralization. Again, it's the rhyolites. There's also the hinge zone and the southeast zone where we drilled almost a 300-meter hole. I believe it was 284 meters. It's low grade at 0.3, but a very, very wide. That's a third of a kilometer worth of copper mineralization. It starts right from surface. That is very interesting. That's a lot of material. That's a lot of tons. And then again, we found new high-grade veins. So there's this drill program. In conclusion, answered a question: is this disseminated? Yes, it is. But it also posed new questions that we weren't necessarily expecting, but we were happy to answer in terms of more drilling, larger deposits, etc. So we exceeded our expectations on this drill program. That is the bottom line. More work is needed, more drilling, more analysis, etc., particularly on the Perry and also on the Springer new zones. So reframing the interpretation, this, again, just to be repetitive, this used to be a high-grade underground mine on the Springer. This is now we're looking at in terms of an open pit. We couldn't have done that, I don't think, without defining the disseminated mineralization. Now that we've done that, we can say that there's really something here. So these are the drill results. So we've broken them out into 2 slides here. These are what we call the high-grade intersections. So anything, anything over 1%, really, we define certainly as in an open pit. If it's over 1% copper, I think that's high grade. When you consider 0.24 is the average open pit copper grade in Canada. And so we have all bunch of intersections there. I've spoken about that. I've highlighted here the 2.5. Personally, my favorite hole was the 1% over 162, which is the last hole listed. And I'll note that it starts from 3 meters. So that's really interesting to me. That was in the hinge zone, which is a very high grade, very mineralized zone, particularly outside of the veins. So we're excited about that. These are our 12 holes. These are our longer intersections. This is anything over 100 meters that we've listed here, ranges from 0.3, 0.4, all the way up to a full percent over 162 meters. That's incredibly long. We had a 284 meter hole that was mineralized. Again, all these are really, really shallow. So I encourage you not only to look at the interval, but look how shallow this mineralization is. So we hit virtually on every single hole. So there's an awful lot of metal in this project. This is a bird's eye view of the work that we did. These are all of our holes that we've mapped out, shown the direction. We've defined the 3 zones of interest. We can see the hinge zone, the mill zone in blue, the southeast zone in red, and actually there's a 4th zone called the rhyolite zone, which is which we've talked about in the past. We always thought that was barren. We've got a couple holes that we drilled just into the rhyolites, and it was completely mineralized. And there was a number of holes that ended, 10, 20 meters, etc., in the rhyolites, and the mineralization continued. So that really was unexpected, but that was something good to be surprised about. So and you can see we overlapped where the veins are. We can see there's some holes that poke through the veins, other holes that went completely away from the veins, again, looking to get information outside and around the veins to see where it is disseminated. Certainly around the contact zone, it is very much disseminated. And again, I'll emphasize that this is on the Springer only. The Perry itself is up to the northeast. Is probably not even in view in this map, but we haven't drilled it yet. We will get to that though. This is a zoom in of the hinge zone. This shows a little clearer there. You can see hole 1903 was entirely into the rhyolites in that green section off to the far left or west. And then we had a number of other holes, and you can go back and look at and just sort of cross-reference this whole details on our website to see where the mineralization is. But there's an awful lot of really good holes that hit the disseminated material there. This is the hinge zone. That's going to be a big part of the open pit. This is sections, and I encourage you to go on our website. Under the Okemiska Copper Mine Project, you'll see we list the sections for each hole. So every single hole we did, we created a section, shows you what it looks like in context of an open pit, where it is relative to the veins that we're aware of, and where the mineralization was distributed throughout the hole. This here is hole 18. It's nicely mineralized throughout. You can see the whole hole has at least 0.3 on various points. It's got sweeteners in throughout there. And that was in the mill zone. This is the hinge zone. This one, as you can see, ended in the rhyolites. This was one of the holes, or the hole, that was 162 meters at over 1% copper equivalent. It's again mineralized throughout. It has some high grade zones there, probably touches some of the vein there in the middle. You can see the high grade spikes, but nonetheless, even where it's not super high grade, it's definitely carrying copper throughout, hence disseminated. And that is on the hinge zone. Another hole, again, this is in the hinge zone as well. This is our second hole. Just another example. This is 0.75% copper. That's very good grade. It's right at surface. It's 105 meters long. Very interesting stuff. Now, this is the brass tacks. Again, as I said before, you can buy Power Ore for 7 cents a share. As of today is September 16th. I don't know what we're going to open up September 17th when you're listening to this, but 7 cents a share. You can see we hit a high of 11 cents, which is still absolutely incredible value. But since then, we've drilled and released these fantastic holes, and you can buy us for less. I think we've exceeded expectations. I think this by no means speaks to what we've done, quite the opposite. This is purely a function of copper being out of vogue. The money, whatever is money in the junior space, is flowing to the gold, and copper is being completely overlooked. If you are interested in investing and not trading, I think copper is somewhere where you want to take a look, because it does look to be getting a heartbeat. But we take this from a long-term approach. We're very, very comfortable with this project. We are a $3 million company. Look at the comparables. I encourage you to do so. But the brass tacks is our company is cheap, but you want to buy things cheap, not expensive. So what is next? More drilling. Definitely drilling on the Springer. The areas that posed new questions to us, we're going to follow up, particularly the rhyolites and the southeast zone is wide open. Then we're going to be drilling on Perry. I might have noted that we've completed the digitization of the historical work on the Perry. We had done that a number of months ago on the Springer, and that allows us to design our drill program. So we're going to be coming out with information on the drill program for Perry. And then, of course, we're going to work towards putting our 43-101, the maiden resource on this project. Originally we're going to put it on the Springer first, to come out with, in effect, 2 reports, one for Springer, one for Perry. We think that the smarter move is, in light of first impressions being the best impressions, we're going to come out with the Springer and the Perry simultaneously. We just think that's the smarter thing to do. And let's face it, in this market, nobody's rushing anything on copper anyway. So we are going to focus on the Perry, focus on the Springer, and we will have more detailed plans on exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, in the coming days or weeks via news release. So you can expect that in the near term. So I'll keep it as brief as possible. Again, my name is Stephen Stewart. Power Ore is PORE. We're listed on the Venture Exchange. If anybody has any questions, they can reach me at these numbers. Thank you for your time.